Who has a smooth life? Sometimes it's smooth, sometimes it's okay. But when you have the attitude of optimism, it gets you through those difficulties a little easier. An optimist is someone who knows that when you take a step backwards after taking a step forward, that's not a failure, that's not a defeat, that's a cha-cha. Speaking of challenges, our next expert faced a truly monumental one. In 2008, we all remember 2008, right? We know what happened there. This woman lost some money, like most of us did. Actually, she lost a lot of money. $14 million she lost in 2008. Because the people she was working with at that time didn't have her best interest in mind. Who's come across people like that? You thought you could trust them, didn't work out. Well, with that step back, she didn't cha-cha. She made her way forward. She did what she needed to do to make it happen. And because of that, she became a highly sought after retirement and financial representative, a real estate and investment expert, a record-breaking leader in sales for high-yielding companies across the Las Vegas Valley, and an enormously successful entrepreneur. She has turned over 100 loan officers. She has trained over 100 loan officers, enabling them to make hundreds of thousands of dollars during their careers. As a leading sales representative for a select few companies here in Las Vegas, she's transformed her team into the highest grossing sales team in Las Vegas. That is amazing, in Las Vegas. And she has generated not only abundant success on her own behalf, but she has led hundreds of people to their own success as well. That's impressive. Here to share with you a powerful mindset of prosperity, please welcome Miss Cindy Birkland.
Hey guys, gosh, when I hear about all that money I lost in '08, I wanted to pack right up again. Jeez. I forgot about all that until I told Ryan that. I'm like, oh. So no better of a person to talk about abundance and prosperity today than me, because if I can make it back, you can too. I have a huge favor to ask before we begin. For all of you guys that are sitting at the back tables, I promise you, I'm not sending anybody back to see you while I'm talking. So can you guys come and be with me? All of you, can you sit with me? Do you mind? Would you be with me? I'm just greedy like that. I want to be with you. Be with me? I'd love it if you would sit down with us. I would really love that. Because we're all sentient beings, and when we share with one another, we feed off each other's energy, and I want your energy with me. So I'm greedy like that, so I appreciate it. I appreciate you being with me. So again, my name is Cindy Birkland, and why am I up here? What warrants me being up here? Well, again, the fact that I lost a lot of money and I can make it back is one. I'm in sales and I'm in business. I have several businesses. I'm in the money business, and I help companies find money. I match money to companies and companies to money. I have about $630 million in projects right now that I'm raising money for. So if you guys know people with lots of money, please send them my way. Okay? I would really appreciate that. Today we're going to be talking about prosperity, and we're going to be talking about abundance. So let's just start about what abundance is. And I am not one to be much for, you promised me this would work. Here it is. What is abundance? I'm not one for working off these little machines. I like to just come from my heart. So you'll find I'm going to do that. But abundance, if we come from a place of just common sense, a common sense explanation, abundance is going to be something like this: a very large quantity of something. Okay. More than enough. To have extra. Overwhelmingly more. To be in overflow. To have much. To me, abundance means prosperity. And when we talk about prosperity, prosperity means a little bit different than an abundance does. And so I want to get into what to prosper means. prospering means to be financially successful. Don't we all want a little bit of that? Okay. To succeed in an enterprise, an activity, to become strong and flourishing. Who wants to be strong and to flourish? Okay. But all of these are great. But for me, I don't know about you, I find that recently, even more recently, every day, life is speeding up. It's getting faster and faster. I look back at when I first started business, and I would have to kind of adjust how my business went, maybe every couple of years. Today, I find that I have to adjust my business almost every single day. Do you guys notice that? Like, time is speeding up so fast. As if we didn't have enough problems in '08, we were just starting to get into our flow and get into things. And guess what? 2 years ago, what happened? COVID. And they shut down our world. And they told us we weren't essential. And we had to stop doing business. A lot of us didn't make it through. Josh talked about having 3 businesses go under because somebody said you're not essential. Well, I beg to differ. But what I will say is this: every day life is getting faster and faster. And how am I supposed to stay abundant and flourish in a life like this? Every day things are changing, and I'm having trouble doing that. So how do I stay ahead of the game and really succeed in life? I like to hang out with people like you guys. You know why? Because you guys are all here to get better. I want to be with people that are growing. But frankly, I'm just not that good at life. I've got to do everything I can to be successful. So I turn to my favorite book, which is the Bible, and I have to rely on the Bible for a lot of things because I'm just not that good. So I want to talk to you today about prospering the way the Bible talks about prospering. And Bible digs into Greek and Hebrew translations because it wasn't written by a bunch of English white guys. It was written by God, and the first translation was Hebrew. But I want to talk about the Greek translation about prospering, and I want to get into that with you today. So when we talk about prospering, the Greek translation, to help on the road or succeed in reaching ongoing state of success that touches all areas of your life. So if you're going to prosper, I would rather prosper than be abundant, if I'm looking at it that way, from that description. I want all areas of my life to be successful. So there's one of my favorite scriptures in the Bible, and it's from 3 John 2, and it says, "Beloved, I wish that in all things that you may prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers." So it's my favorite scripture, and I read this to myself every single day because I remember that in John, he was talking to a very good friend of his, and he said, "Beloved, I wish that in all things you would prosper, even as your soul prospers." What did he mean by your soul to prosper? This is one of the most mistaken scriptures in all of the Bible because it thinks that God was saying, above all else, I want you to prosper. That's not what God was saying. What God was saying is, beloved, I wish that you would know how much I love you, on the degree that you feel so much love that your soul begins to prosper. And when your soul begins to prosper, everything in your life will be prospering. So when he said, "Beloved, I wish that all things, above all things, you would prosper, even as your soul prospers," it means that you understand how loved you are. Your soul begins to prosper, and everything else is going to fall into place. So I want to talk a little bit about what prospering looks like. And a lot of people think that to prosper, it always looks really, really good. But if we've been through life, we've been beaten up a little bit. Anybody gotten beat down by life just a little bit recently? Well, we can all commiserate together. But I want to tell you how important prospering is, and not only to all of us, but to God. God mentions prospering 121 times in the Bible. So when I read my Bible and I'm learning about prospering, I'm like, whew, there's a lot of scriptures that I can read about prospering. But I want to tell you a story about a young man. It's one of my favorite stories in the Bible because I think that we can all relate to it. So, anybody remember the book about the story about Joseph? Okay, so I'm going to paraphrase this story a little bit. So, Joseph was the youngest of 10 boys. So, can you imagine being born like way, way, way in the olden days and you were the youngest of 10 boys? So, I can't imagine that would be an easy position to be born into. But what ended up happening is Joseph was born with a very unique gift. He had the gift of the prophetic, he could see the future. And as a very young child, he would see things. Well, his dad very quickly realized that he had a gift and he became his father's favorite child. So the youngest of 10 children, his father Jesse would send all the other boys out into the fields to work, and Joseph would get to hang on back with the wives or with all the mothers, and he'd get the easy life, and he'd have to just get water from the well. And he was just kind of a spoiled kid, and so spoiled to the degree that his father Jesse had a coat of many colors made for him. And back in the day, things that were made out of colored fabrics were very, very hard to find, and they were considered you were very wealthy if you maybe had a purple, anything with purple or with lots of color. Well, Joseph didn't only have just a purple coat, but he had a coat of many colors, and his daddy gave that to him. Well, can you imagine being those 9 other brothers? They didn't get a purple coat. They didn't get a purple coat of many colors. They got nothing. They got to go work out in the fields. So what ended up happening with Joseph is his dad one day sent him out to the fields with the older boys. He sent him out to tell the brothers something that was going on that they needed to know about. And while they were there, older brothers noticed that Joseph was on his way, and they started to commiserate together, decided that they were going to do something really terrible to Joseph. And when Joseph got to them, they decided to throw him in a pit. So they didn't want his dad. They were going to kill him. But one of the older brothers said, no, don't kill the boy. Just get rid of him. So they threw him in a pit. They took off his coat of many colors. They slaughtered one of the animals nearby. They put blood on it, and they went back home, and they told their father that Joseph had been killed. And they took Joseph a couple days later. They took him from the pit, and they sold him into slavery into another country. Okay? So his father is mortified. He's grieving. They no longer have Joseph. He goes, and now he's in another country. Well, because of his gifts, he was able to get a job as a slave working for a very, very wealthy gentleman by the name of Potiphar. And he was working for Potiphar, and because he was such a good worker, and because he would always tell Potiphar things that were going on that he could see in the future, very quickly he rose up in the ranks, and he became like the chief captain of this beautiful estate in Potiphar's home in Egypt. And he rose above the rankings, and he became, as he got older, he became actually very, very handsome. And one day Potiphar decided to go and take a trip, and he left his whole homestead and estate with Joseph in charge. So imagine this boy has a family in another country. He's been sold into slavery, and now he's rising up the ranks, and he's now the head captain of this whole entire estate for this very, very wealthy businessman in Egypt. Well, everybody had their eye on Joseph because he was so amazing. He had such a unique gift. But there was somebody else that had their eye on Joseph, and that was Potiphar's wife. She thought he was hot, and she wanted to be with Joseph. So she tried to seduce Joseph. Well, Joseph was one of those very, very loyal guys, and he didn't want to do anything to Potiphar. So as she was trying to be with him, he ran off, and she grabbed him, and she got a piece of his clothing. Well, he was horrified and left and went about his business. Well, when Potiphar got back home, his wife told him that Joseph tried to rape her. And she had proof in her hand. There was his clothing. Potiphar was so enraged, he never bothered to go ask Joseph, his slave, what had happened, because he was just his slave after all, right? Of course, his wife would never lie. And guess what? Joseph was brought now, thrown into a prison in Egypt. So now he's been put into a pit. He's been sold into slavery. Now he rises to the ranks. Does this sound like your life, guys? We've got ups and downs, right? He's rising to the ranks in this beautiful estate, and now he's thrown into prison. And now he's thrown in there, I mean, a slave thrown into prison. Do you think he's ever getting out? Probably not. So now he's in prison, and he's with all these other prisoners, and guess what? His gifts, again, he's able to tell the future. And during this time, the Pharaoh of Egypt is having these dreams. Horrible, horrible dreams, night after night after night. He's tormented by these dreams. Well, one of the people that was in the prison with Joseph happened to be one of the cooks or the chefs that worked in the Pharaoh's house. And one of the chefs says, there's this guy I was in jail with, and he can kind of tell things. He can tell the future. Maybe you should talk to this guy. Now imagine this. Here he is, a slave thrown into prison, and now he is requested by the Pharaoh of Egypt to come and decipher these dreams. Pretty amazing. It's amazing what will happen when you never know is going to happen. So now he's in the Pharaoh's house, and he's telling the Pharaoh what's going on with these dreams. What the Pharaoh had been dreaming about was famine. See, there was a famine coming to Egypt, and nobody knew it. And Joseph was able to decipher these dreams and tell him, we're about to have a famine for 7 years. And so what he did is he coached Pharaoh, prepare for the worst. Assume we're not going to have any food for the next 7 years. So guess what? Pharaoh gave instructions throughout the land that everybody needed to prepare. They needed to give so much of their grain every single year into Pharaoh's house, and it would be stored up just in case. Well, guess what? What Joseph ended up prophesying came true. They went into a huge famine. So Joseph was now made the top guy in all of Egypt. He was the right-hand man to Pharaoh because he had saved the whole all of Egypt from famine. So imagine this. Now, all the surrounding countries are having famine too. Jesse, Joseph's dad, finds out that somebody in Egypt knew there was going to be a famine, and there's more than enough. There's abundance everywhere in Egypt. They have so much grain. Please, he sends the brothers to go to Egypt to find out about this grain. Please go with this money so that we won't starve to death. Guess what? These 9 brothers end up in Egypt, begging for mercy from this man named Joseph, the right hand, all of the king of Egypt, the Pharaoh. Guess what? Joseph saw those 9 brothers and knew that they were his brothers. Guess what? The brothers did not know that Joseph was their brother because they got rid of him as a boy. But now imagine, fast forward how many years? What must Joseph look like? He's the guy with all the jewelry. He's wearing purple clothing, which meant the wealthiest of all in all of the nation. He's wearing all of this. And they're coming to this man, the captain of all of Egypt, to ask, please, can we buy some grain for you? Well, guess what? If we look at how this story goes, if you look at what Joseph had to go through, he was thrown into a pit because of his brothers being so jealous. Then he was thrown into a prison because he was seduced and he wouldn't have an affair with his boss's wife. So now he's thrown in, and guess what? He goes into Egypt, and now he's in charge of everything. But what did he have to go through to get on the other side of this? See, what Joseph ended up doing is he was learning how to prosper in the worst of conditions. He wasn't letting anything going on in his world affect him from prospering. And I want to share one more story with you. To me, like, we all can relate with stories about people that go through things. But for me, I had to learn about what prospering really, really means from a different standpoint. So Ryan alluded to a life that I used to have. So pre 2008, I made a lot of money. And during that time, I was a mortgage lender and we were doing all kinds of loans and I was making all kinds of money. And I got used to making 6 figures a month after taxes. And when you make 6 figures a month and you're used to doing that, what happens is my lifestyle was that of abundance. I prospered. I had more cars than I could put my butt in. I bought lots of real estate. I had rentals. I had everything you could possibly want. I went on these amazing vacations. Well, then one horrible day in 2008, the market went berserk. And I just figured it was going to be like every other recession that we had ever had. See, when I was in the mortgage business, I had already survived 4 recessions in the many years that I had already been in real estate. So I thought, this is just another one. It'll be fine. So I do what I always do, just try to spend my way out of it. And I was trying to save all my houses because my tenants had quit paying me. And I was like, we'll be over it soon. And I'm going through all my cash to pay down all these houses. Well, as we move forward, the recession didn't go away, it stayed. And what ended up happening is all the money that I had stored away was now gone because I was trying to save my credit and save everything. Well, I ended up needing some help. I had to go into a different field. I went into timeshare sales and I had to learn that. And I had a friend of mine, his mom came to live with me to help me with my children. And I needed to learn a whole new career and start all over. And I no longer was making 6 figures a month. I wasn't even making 6 figures a year. I wasn't making much of anything. And I'm learning a new career. And I had to learn to start not relying on myself so much. Because what I had been doing all along wasn't working. Because if it had continued, I would have continued to prosper all on my own. And I started realizing that I really needed God because what I was doing, if it was working, it would have stayed, right? So that night I decided I needed to get to church. I had 0 money in my account. And I don't know if you guys remember back to 2008, gas was almost as high back in 2008 as it is today. And I had one of those beautiful Lincoln Navigators. It was just gorgeous and it was super sexy when I bought it. But when I had no money to put money in the gas tank, it was one of the biggest, I hated that truck because it cost me, every time I turned around, it was $100. Now it would be even more to fill that tank. But I wanted to get to Bible study that night, and Bible study was clear in Summerlin. I had no money in my bank account, absolutely none. And I had just enough money in that Lincoln Navigator to get over to Summerlin, but I did not have enough money in that or gas in the truck to get back. And I'm in conundrum because I'm like, I have got to get over to church. I'm going to church. I felt so compelled to go to church, but I'm like, God, if I go to church, I'm not going to get home. And I've got the kids in the car. I've got my stepmom in the car. I'm going to look like a complete idiot getting us over there and not being able to get us home. And that still small voice, we'll call him God, said, go to church. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to church. So I put the kids in the car, put my stepmom in the car. We go to church. And I'm driving all the way over there like, you are such an idiot. You're going to get us stranded with your 2 little kids in the car. What kind of a mother are you? The conversation, the tape that is playing in my head, you must be out of your mind. And I'm driving and I'm driving. We get to church, and that night, as we're walking in, everybody's getting handed a raffle ticket. Take a raffle ticket. Take a raffle ticket. So I go in, and now we're down, and they start the music, and the band's playing, and I'm standing there like, you're such an idiot. I'm like, okay, we're just gonna have a good time and we'll figure it out when we got to figure it out. So as the band is playing and music is playing and people are down at the altar and I'm standing down there and we're listening to the music, and all of a sudden, right before church starts, this little old lady comes up to me and she's shaking and she's kind of going like this to me. And I'm like, what's going on? And she walks up and she goes like this. And she put something in my hand and she said, "The Lord told me to give you this." She walks off and I look and there's a $20 bill in my hand. You guys, when I tell you, I had no, and I had gone from making 6 figures to nothing. I did not know how to operate with no money. I don't do broke very well. When this woman put $20 in my hand, I about hit the floor. Not only that, so I'm sitting through church and I'm just like, wow. Well, as they're getting ready to tie things up from church, the pastor says, "We have a surprise for everybody here in church tonight. For everybody that got a raffle ticket, we're going to be giving you a Thanksgiving dinner." For everybody that got a raffle ticket. You know, I had a 7-year-old, I had a 4-year-old, I had my stepmom in the car, and I had me. 4 raffle tickets. We walked out that night with Thanksgiving dinner and all the fixings, because it was almost, 13 years ago at this time of year. I could not get my Lincoln Navigator hatch to shut. We had so much groceries in the car. I'm shaking as I put the hatch together, trying to get it shut, because on the way over, my stepmom had kept saying, "We don't have enough groceries for DeAndre's lunch tomorrow." And I'm like, here you are driving to church. You don't have any money. You don't have any gas. There's no groceries for DeAndre. And now I'm driving back home with my truck so full. I have 4 turkeys and all the fixins. And all I could do, and we stopped at the gas station. I put my little $20, got us home. As God is my witness, guys, that day, I learned how to prosper, because it was not about the money that was in my bank account that day. It was about, am I prospering in all areas? I would have never learned what it means to free fall and to rely on somebody else on that degree. Like, how was I ever going to get out of that in my own understanding? I got in my car and I drove to Summerlin with no gas in my car. I come back with gas and a car so full of groceries. But what did I have to do to get to that point to learn how to prosper? Well, I lost millions of dollars. It was the worst thing I could ever think of until that night that I cried all the way home. Because now what I know is what it really means to prosper, really means in all areas of my life, that no matter what, it doesn't matter the money that's in my bank account. It doesn't matter the cars that I drive. It doesn't matter the real estate that I have. It doesn't matter the money in the bank. I prosper because I prosper. I prosper because God decides that. God lets me know how much He loves me because He shows me every single day. But had I not gone through that valley experience in my life, I would have never learned this. What Joseph had to learn in the pit and in the prison before he was the Pharaoh's second-hand man is, you're going to go through some valleys, but I'm going to teach you how to truly prosper. See, in our lives, guys, we can't do it on our own. If we could, life would be easy all the time. I'm so grateful now that I know that I prosper whether I do or I don't, because prospering is here. Has nothing to do with we go out and make happen. Prospering is a choice. Prospering is a way that we operate. So in closing today, I want to say this. Beloved, I wish that above all things, that you would prosper in health, even as your soul prospers. Thank you.
Cindy Birkland, ladies and gentlemen. Cindy Birkland. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Wasn't that amazing?
Cindy Birkland here. Just wanted to say thank you for watching the channel. And if you want more content, just need you to click right here. And don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, clicking right here. If any of these conversations have interested you, please get a hold of us at cindybirkland.com, or you can reach me at cindybirkland@gmail.com. Thanks again for watching.